Hi everyone, my name's Adam Rice and welcome to the vlog. So one of the questions that you get asked when you own a sailboat, and I've been asked here, is how did you get into sailing? I mean, where did this whole thing start? You know, what piqued my interest? And to tell this story, I have brought a few things to actually show you guys from my past and to show you here on camera to kind of give you the story and the background of how I got into sailing. And I thought it would be kind of fun to show you guys from when I first learned or thought I might be interested in it until I eventually got my boat. And I hope that what this is going to potentially show people at some level, at least what sailing has really taught me and what my intuition tells me about what this video is actually about, is that we all have these things in life that we really want to do. And for some of us, we might want to do something and it seems like super out of reach, like it's really unachievable or it's hard to do, or we just don't see right now how it's going to work out. And I think if that's you and if you're in that spot, that it's important that in whatever way you can, in whatever capacity you can, to try and start materializing that, try and start visualizing it, try and start putting it together or making it part of your life. Because I promise you, if you do that, if you really focus on that, you will bring whatever that is that you've always wanted to do or always been curious about for good reason into your life. So how I first got into sailing and where this all started for me is it's actually kind of a funny story. It's literally a funny story. And in fact, that story is right here. This is a book, which is in this plastic wrap because my dad has it now. But this is the book that started it all. This is a book called The Sailor Dog. And actually, I had to look at the title there because I always know it as Scuppers the Sailor Dog. This dog is Scuppers. So what this is it's a story of Scuppers looking to go off on an adventure. He's looking at different options. He's looking at going under the sea on a submarine, on a train, on a car, and eventually Scuppers settles on a sailboat. And that was my first dream sailboat. That was Scuppers. And in this book, Scuppers goes on adventures, he gets shipwrecked, and he ends up in exotic ports, and he finds his way out, and he has, you know, a perfect adventure. And at a really young age, I just became really interested in the idea of going over the sea and being on top of the water. And I don't really know why that attracted me, but it did. And I always wanted to be like that when I was a kid, you know, on the top of a boat, looking out at sea. And it's pretty cool that I get to do that now. But this is really where a lot of that started. And then what happened after that, I went on a family friend's sailboat when I was about in the first grade in South Haven, Michigan. And the sailboat was a Pearson 28. And I went down below in that sailboat and just thought, wow, this sailboat can go anywhere in the world. That is the coolest thing ever. So that, in combination with this book, really put me on a path towards wanting to do something with sailing, eventually in some capacity. I didn't know anything about my life. I didn't know what I wanted to do for a career. I'm still working on the career stuff, but I knew that I wanted a sailboat. So the next thing that happened is I had an incredible dad, and my dad knew I wanted a sailboat, and he probably knew it was going to be a while before I had one. And so one Halloween, no joke, he actually did this. He built this sailboat out of wood. Let's see if this focus works. And he literally pulled me around like the streets for Halloween, and I dressed up in a captain's outfit. I think he had a ton of fun building the boat, and I can guarantee you that I'm one of the few people who has, as a kid, gone as a sailboat for Halloween. And it actually did happen, and that was kept for years. It was put on this wagon, and it was just hilarious. And so you know, the little steps you take towards doing something. And then after that, when you're interested in something, people start buying you books. I'm sure that many of you have things like this sitting around, the complete manual for sailing. And this was long before I even started taking sailing lessons, which I did in middle school. But I just kind of began to get introduced to the concepts in sailing. And I just loved looking at the pictures. And I loved just imagining where I could be or wanted to be. The funny thing is, now looking through this book, I actually recognize all of the boats, and I actually know what all of them are. But before they were all just sailboats. But now, having owned a sailboat and fantasized on Yacht World about all the sailboats I could own someday. I actually know what a lot of these boats are. And it's just kind of funny to look back at this. It's been a while. So there's that. And then in high school, I started to take the whole sailing thing a little bit further, and I was a drawer, I was a painter, my dad was an artist, that's why he built me a freaking sailboat for Halloween. So I kind of started to follow up in his footsteps, and I would... You can see my giant light there, so maybe this won't be such a good show. But you can see that I started to actually paint and draw sailboats. And this is a sailboat that I made in high school. I think I was a sophomore here, and it was an okay painting, but it was just my way of kind of getting into that adventure and getting into experiencing that, even though I really couldn't experience it at the time. And it just really continued on from there. And I continued drawing and painting sailboats, visualizing what it might be like to be off on those adventures, on those distant shores, on my own sailboat someday. And I continued working at that. And actually, I have a whole series of those sailboat paintings, which I wish I had more of them to show you. I just don't, because they're in a lot of different people's houses. But just recently, I went back. I went to see if I could still do a sailboat painting. And so I'm going to show you this one. And this sailboat painting is maybe one some of you will recognize because it's of a very well-known boat in the sailing community on YouTube, which I'm sure many of you are a part of. And here it is. I did this actually 4 or 5 months ago. Side note, I went to school and I majored in painting. I stopped painting as much when I got the sailboat because the sailboat became my art piece. You know, instead of doing this, I was putting caulk around a port like 5 times. But this is actually Distant Shores, and I just saw this photo online and I was like, okay guys, I gotta do that as a painting. Anyone from Distant Shores, if you happen to be watching this, it's yours. It's your photograph as far as I'm concerned. You can have it, but it's a really nice little painting. And this is actually of the Southerly 480. And it's actually probably one of my favorite paintings I've ever done. But even with my current boat, I still continue to fantasize. And that Southerly 480 is such a beautiful boat. Not that I don't like my boat. You know what they say about sailors? You always want a boat that's 3 feet bigger. And I guess in my case, 48 feet that you can roll up on a beach sounds pretty nice to me. But it's about the process more than anything else. I'll get there eventually. So all of that, the point of showing you those different things is just to say that I've wanted to do this and own a sailboat for a very, very long time. And finally buying it when I was like 24, which is how old I was when I bought my first boat. That whole entire process of going through and really wanting something and visualizing it and knowing that it was going to be a while before I could get it, but continuing to go after it, I think that's really healthy. And I think when you really want to do something in life, it's important that in whatever way you can, you try and make that a part of your life, and you try and show the people around you that whatever that is, that it's important to you, that it's a part of who you are. Because in doing so, I think that helps other people understand you. It also helps show people what your goals are and what you really want your life to look like. And you never know who's watching. You really never know who might help you move towards your goals. You never know what's going to happen when you show people what you're interested in. You know, for me, drawing and painting and talking about boats let people know that I was interested in boats. And there's a whole nother side of this story too. Those were just the things that I was doing at the time to really begin to materialize this dream of owning a sailboat, of participating in that craft. But I also had a step-uncle who was a circumnavigator who owned a 44-foot steel boat, which was a waterline. Beautiful boat. I've seen pictures of it. Like I said, again, the people who lived behind me growing up who owned that Pearson 28, you know, I knew they were sailors. And so I had people around my life that I knew owned sailboats and I knew did the whole sailing thing. And so all of that just kind of culminated in a certain part of me. And I think on top of really liking sailing, I've also really just loved adventure. And I view sailing more as a tool to be able to move into adventures. I love the stories. I love the people. I love what happens when you learn to let go a little bit and just like enjoy the process or wherever you are or whatever the conditions are. Those are the things that I love about sailing. And I just have found after trying adventures in a lot of different ways that the best adventures, like the best form of having one, seems at this point in my life to be a sailboat, kind of just confirming everything I talked about. So maybe there is a bias there, clearly there is, but that it really is something special. And I think it's something special, not just to people who sail, but also to people who look at sailboats. To me, what sailing is and has always represented to a certain extent is just like a dream. And sailing and being a sailor and owning a sailboat, to me, has always represented someone who's really followed down and chased a dream, because it's such an unrealistic, like unpractical thing to do. It takes longer to get anywhere on a sailboat. It costs more money to get anywhere on a sailboat. It takes years to really get good at sailing. So the only reason to participate in sailing and do anything on a sailboat is because you love it. And I think that there's something about people who do something for no other reason than because that you love it, because you're interested in doing it.